Welcome to Starbound. If you're tired of AI-generated slop and want real human storytelling, please subscribe to support this channel. My name's Stolarski. I'll be your narrator. Let's get into the story. Imris Kane decided it was a filter change. Space kept its own time, but the ship's chronometer marked a point in its orbit for a filter change, and the air in the command deck was stale, thick with the chemical bite of an overworked scrubber, a sure sign the task was due. It was also the day he found the ghost. He was watching a waterfall of light spill down his primary gravimetrics display, a haptic interface that translated space-time topography into a landscape he could almost feel. The display was mostly noise, the kind of background static most sensor techs filtered out and forgot. Imris, however, had learned to listen to it. He found the patterns, and for the last half-shift, one pattern persisted. Zia Hassan spoke from the pilot's seat, her voice crackling over the comm, bright and sharp. She was humming a pop tune from before the diaspora, punctuated by a frustrated kick to her console. That portside magnetizer has slipped its alignment again. The alignment's off, she swiveled. So, have you found something to break the monotony of my maintenance log? See any space whales? A rogue singularity with my name on it? Just the usual cosmic tinnitus, Imris replied, his focus on the screen. He leaned closer, his own reflection a pale ghost on the glass. A persistent fatigue had settled into the lines of his face. And a persistent little ripple that's trying to hide. On the command deck's central dais, Captain Ishka looked up from her manifest pad. She tilted her head, which was armored with the interlocking silicate plates of her Gessian biology. The plates, which shifted with minute adjustments to regulate heat and sense atmospheric pressure, settled with a faint, dry whisper. She set down her pad in silence, the deliberate gesture speaking of immense, contained patience. Ripple? Gravitational signature, Imris clarified, tapping a command sequence. A thin, wavering line isolated itself from the background signals, glowing a warm amber. Its signature is smaller than a celestial body, steadier than debris. It's been pacing us since the last jump, 500,000 kilometers off our stern, matching our velocity vector. Zia swiveled in her chair, a smudge of grease, a permanent resident on her left cheek. A tail? Bullshit. I ran a full sweep an hour ago. Thermal, EM, neutrino, LiDAR. The void is clean, my friend. We're alone. Your sensors look for things, Imris said. Mine feel for their weight. Most species dismissed the data stream as chaotic noise. Only a mind trained to find patterns in chaos, like a human's, can parse it. And right now, something is shadowing our wake. Ishka fixed him with her unblinking gaze, her pupils dark voids against the mineral sheen of her irises. The plates of her Gessian face stayed still as she spoke. Kane, a phantom chase depletes our low fuel reserves. The margins on this run are already thinner than a vacuum-sealed alibi. Are you certain? Imris kept his gaze on the amber line. He'd learned that, with Ishka, confidence came from quiet certainty. It's a ship. It's using a stealth drive. Probably a high-efficiency grav sink to mask its energy output. Its mass, however, gives it away. Everything has mass. See that little waver? That's its internal dampeners compensating for our drive wash. They're trying to hold a perfect position. In a few seconds, we'll pass a minor density fluctuation, a bit of interstellar dust. We'll drift a few microns starboard. They'll have to correct. Zia scoffed, but she was already watching her own console. Ishka stayed silent, her gaze unwavering. Count with me, Imris said, his voice a low murmur. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. He tapped his screen. The once straight amber line hitched. A tiny correction, a minute flex of a hidden drive. It was the gravimetric equivalent of a held breath. Zia's humming stopped. The life support's low thrum was now deafening in the quiet. "Holy shit," she whispered. Ishka's fine manipulators, usually tucked away within her heavier forearms, emerged and tapped a patient rhythm on the arm of her command chair. She keyed a command into her armrest. "Zia, lock down internal comms to essential personnel. Go to silent running. I want this ship ghost quiet until we know what we're dealing with." She kept her gaze on Imris. "You have my attention, Mr. Kane," she said, her voice a low rumble. "Tell me what you feel." Ishka took one look at the refined data. She'd seen a mass energy profile like this once before. The memory was old and scarred over, always present. "Approximate mass is 850 tons, Imris reported, his voice now taut with focus. "Drive signature is a modified Kasimov field, running cold, designed for low-energy bleed and maximum absorption. They are more than hiding. They're a dead spot for conventional sensors." "It's a Curie," Ishka stated. The name fell into the quiet cockpit. Zia hugged her arms to her chest, a sudden chill on her skin. Zia whipped around. "A Curie? You're joking. They're myths. Stories you tell rookie pilots to make them check their sensor logs." "They are real," Ishka said, her voice flat. She keyed a command into her console, bringing up a restricted naval schematic. A wireframe vessel, all knife-like angles and weapon emplacements, materialized in the holotank's shimmering particle field. The Shadow Maw, an Akiri Hunter-class vessel. They will follow a target for days, learning its rotation schedules, its power fluctuations, the exact moment the comms officer takes a break. They only strike when they are certain of success. But our cargo manifest lists a Class 9 biospecimen under guild charter. That kind of prize makes them patient. They'll want to be sure." Imris leaned back, running a hand through his perpetually messy hair. "Well, that's reassuring." "My first command," Ishka said, fixing her gaze on the hologram, "was a bulk freighter called the Wandering Light. We were hauling refined helium-3 to the Procyon colonies. A routine haul. The Akuri shadowed us for 4 days. Our sensors showed clear space. Then our systems failed. All of them. Life support, comms, nav. They decloaked 100 meters off our bow, a void in the starfield, and gave us one demand: surrender the ship. We complied. They took the ship and vented the crew." Zia gripped the arms of her chair. "Captain, I'm sorry. I was in an extravehicular unit, inspecting a faulty antenna when it happened," Ishka continued, her tone unchanging, as if reading a damage report. "They missed me on their scans. I could only watch as my vessel, my crew, vanished. That is the Akuri way." Silence descended on the bridge. The ship's environmental hum seemed to fade, leaving only the weight of Ishka's words. Imris watched the amber line on his console. What had been a curiosity was now a threat. "Okay," Zia said, her voice tight. "Okay, so we run. Highburn. I can get us to the Shroud Nebula in 2 shifts. Even they would be navigating blind in there." Ishka gave a slow nod. It was the logical, tactical choice. "Plot the course," Miss Hassan. Maximum burn." "Wait," Imrus said. Both women turned to him. "Running is what they expect," he countered, tapping his console thoughtfully. "A panicked freighter making a desperate bolt for cover. They're faster, Ishka just confirmed it. They'll run us down, bleed our fuel, and take us apart when we're exhausted. Fighting is suicide. Our cargo magnetizers against whatever they're packing, we could only singe their hull plating." "You have an alternative, Mr. Kane?" Ishka's voice was quiet, each word carrying a sharp edge. "Yeah," Imrus said, a slow smile touching his lips for the first time that shift. "We play with them." Zia stared at him. "Play with them? They're Akuri pirates, Imrus, a different class of predator than some asteroid-dwelling scavenger." "They think they're unseen," Imrus explained, leaning forward, his focus sharpening. "Their entire strategy, their whole reputation, builds on being the ghost in the dark. We can see them. That's an advantage they have yet to consider. Instead of running, instead of fighting, we become unpredictable." He looked from Zia's stunned face to Ishka's impassive one. "We let them get close. We let them think they're setting up for a scan or disabling shot. And right when they commit, we move. We make a bizarre, seemingly pointless maneuver that just happens to put us exactly where they least expect us. We'll fly like we're drunk. We'll make them question their gear, their tactics, their sanity. We learn how they hunt by making a complete mockery of it." Ishka watched him, the seconds stretching out. The memory of the wandering light coiled in her gut, a cold knot urging her to run, to follow doctrine, to do the sensible thing. But doctrine had gotten her first crew killed. The sensible choice was helplessness. This human, this tired, coffee-addicted specialist, with his uncanny vibration sense, was offering something else, a different path. Chaos. She gave a single curt nod. The sound was sharp, final. "Fine, Mr. Kane. We will dance with your ghost. But this is reconnaissance, a data-gathering exercise. The moment they scratch my ship, we run. Am I clear?" "Perfectly, Captain," Imrus said, his smile widening. Zia just shook her head, letting out a shaky laugh. "You're both insane." Later, when the bridge was on its third watch lighting and Zia was running a quiet diagnostic at the helm, Ishka retreated to her quarters. The room was Spartan, furnished with functional efficiency. On a small magnetic plate next to her cot rested a single personal item, a small framed hologram of her first crew. She picked it up. 8 faces smiled back at her. A grizzled human engineer, a young Carini navigator with slender, double-jointed arms, a jovial Pelian cargo master. They were a good crew, a family of a sort. They trusted her. They followed her orders, followed the book, and the book had led them to an unmarked grave in the void. She remembered the attack's insidious quiet, the sudden, inexplicable failure of system after system. The comms stayed silent when they should have been screaming with panicked hails from sector patrol. And then the ship. The ship appeared as if it had always been there, a shape defined only by the stars it blotted out. She remembered her own helplessness, adrift in her extravehicular suit, a ghost watching ghosts. For years, that feeling had defined her command style, rigid, cautious by the book. She vowed to remain always prepared. But they were prepared now, in a way beyond her previous conception. She looked from the frozen smiles on the hologram to the live feed from the bridge monitor on her wall. Imrus explained something to Zia, pointing at his console with a languid ease while Zia leaned in, her posture radiating a focused, manic curiosity. They were a chaotic, unpredictable pair. A human who could feel the universe's whispers, and another who could make a battered freighter move with a fighter's deftness. Ishka's manipulators clenched into fists. This was about survival. It was about protecting this new, strange, loud family she had assembled. She would protect this crew. This time would be different. This time, their hunter would learn to be afraid. She placed the hologram back on its shelf, the smiling faces watching her as she returned to the bridge. On the Shadow Maw's bridge, Captain Harrow watched the tactical projection hanging in the bridge's center with the satisfaction of a master artist observing his canvas. The target, a lumbering cargo hauler designated the Vagrant, plodded along, an oblivious beast of burden crawling across a black velvet cloth. His ship was a perfect, unseen predator, positioned just outside the freighter's maximum sensor range, a ghost in its wake. "Position holding, Captain," his second-in-command, Lear, reported from the sensor station. Lear was a pragmatic and thorough officer, but Harrow always found his perpetual caution to be a tedious flaw. "All systems nominal. Stealth field is stable." "Excellent," Harrow said, his voice a smooth, confident purr. The Akiri physique was tall and slender, and Harrow moved with the sudden, sharp motions of a hunting bird. His matte black integument absorbed the bridge's low light, rendering his form a void against the displays. "Let's get a little closer. Move to vector Gamma 9. I want a full, passive scan of their cargo manifests and power grid." "Acknowledged. Initiating maneuver." The Maw's engines emitted only a whisper of neutrinos as it slid closer. Harrow watched, anticipating the data stream that would lay his victim's secrets bare. He orchestrated his heists down to the second, each step a calculated element in a flawless sequence. Then the freighter moved. The freighter executed a controlled, baffling maneuver, a sharp lateral burn, a seemingly pointless expenditure of fuel that pushed it several thousand kilometers off its previous course, right out of their optimal scanning path. Harrow's posture stiffened slightly. "Report." Lear's claws clicked on his console. "Unscheduled maneuver, Captain. Purpose indeterminate. Possibly avoiding an uncharted micrometeoroid cloud." "Sloppy," Harrow scoffed, relaxing. "A drunkard at the helm. It is inconsequential. Recalculate and resume the approach." "Yes, Captain." But as the Maw adjusted, Lear's claws paused over his console. The freighter's burn was preemptive. They seemed to anticipate the move. He stared at his displays, feeling the fine filaments on his neck stir. The prey was acting strangely. He filed the thought away, dismissing it as the paranoia his captain so often accused him of. For now. "They're taking the bait," Immers said, a grin playing on his lips. He leaned back in his chair, propped one leg on the console, and cradled a mug of coffee in his hands. He looked like a man enjoying a particularly good movie. "Here they come again," he announced, dipping low to scan our underbelly. "They think our sensor array is weakest there." He took a sip of coffee. "Zia, on my mark, give me a 30-degree topside roll and a 5-second burn from the port maneuvering thrusters." "A topside roll? Why?" Zia asked, her hands already poised over the helm controls. "Because it's absurd," Immers said cheerfully. "Its tactical genius lies in its apparent pointlessness, a maneuver any sane pilot would dismiss. The roll will also place our heavily shielded main reactor right between us and them, blinding their passive scan." "I love it," Zia laughed, the sound echoing in the quiet bridge. "Give me the mark." 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Mark. The Vagrant lurched. Inertial dampeners strained as the ship executed an apparently clumsy, corkscrewing roll, its port thrusters firing in a ridiculous off-axis push. An outside observer would think the pilot had a spasm at the controls. From Immers's perspective, it was a thing of beauty. On his screen, the amber ripple representing the Akiri ship faltered, its smooth approach interrupted. It had to execute a sharp correction to avoid getting too close. A low chuckle rumbled from the command chair. Even Ishka had a grim smile on her face. "They're confused," Immers reported, the grin now firmly in place. "Their approach is stalled. They're holding position, probably arguing about what just happened." "Let's occupy their thoughts," Ishka said, the smile vanishing as it appeared. "What's their next likely move, Mr. Kane?" Immers studied the patterns. "They've tried shadowing and a low pass. My guess? They'll try to get ahead of us, jump to a point on our projected course, and wait for us to stumble into their ambush." "Can you feel a jump drive charging?" "I'll feel a ripple when they go. It's a big splash. Unmistakable." He took another sip of coffee. "Zia, get ready to do something incredibly pointless with the emergency braking thrusters." Zia let out a whoop of delight. "Huh, best shift ever." "It happened again, Captain." Lear's voice was tight, strained. He stood before Harrow, a data pad held in his grip so tight his claws left small indentations in the casing. On the main holotank, the Vagrant was once again plodding along its original course, as if its series of bizarre lurches and rolls were a fever dream. "Explain," Harrow said, his voice dangerously soft. "I have analyzed their last 4 maneuvers," Lear said, forcing himself to meet his captain's gaze. "At 1407, they performed a lateral burn that countered our initial approach. At 1422, they executed a topside roll that blocked our ventral scan. At 1441, they engaged braking thrusters for 3 seconds, causing us to overshoot when we attempted to move into a forward position. And just now, they vented drive plasma from their port nacelle. A reckless in-flight diagnostic procedure that perfectly masked their ship from a long-range gravitic pulse we were about to initiate." He took a shaky breath. "Captain, 4 maneuvers, each random on its surface, have countered 4 of our tactical approaches with pinpoint accuracy. This is beyond luck." Harrow turned, his sleek black form a silhouette against the starfield.
"What are you suggesting, Lear? That this dilapidated freighter, this derelict with a drunk at the helm, is detecting the most advanced stealth vessel in the quadrant? That they are somehow outthinking us?"
"I am suggesting the data is anomalous," Lear insisted. "They act like a hunter's lure." Harrow shot out a hand, snatching the pad from Lear's grasp. He narrowed his eyes at the data, then tossed it onto a console with a dismissive clatter.
"Your paranoia is becoming tiresome," Harrow hissed. "Perhaps their pilot is high on narcotics, or their navigation computer is faulty. I have no time for conspiracy theories born of cowardice. Their luck has reached its limit."
He stalked back to the command throne.
"Helm, prepare a more aggressive approach. Take us to their flank, just outside of visual range, and charge the forward plasma cannon. A warning shot. Let's see how they dance with a plasma bolt at their heels."
Lear returned to his station, the ship's systems feeling cold and brittle beneath his touch. The prey should act frightened and run. This freighter was playing. The universe lit up in a silent, brilliant flash of green-white energy just off the Vagrant's port bow. The plasma bolt bloomed and died in the void, but its message was clear. The game had changed. "Okay, they're getting angry," Zia said. Her knuckles were white on the controls, and she set her mouth in a thin, hard line. "They're tired of the game," Ishka observed, her voice calm. "That was a warning. the next one will find its mark. An alarm chirped on Imris's console. The sound was faint, almost apologetic. "They got a piece of us," he said, frowning at the readings. "The near-miss plasma bolt's energy discharge reflected off our hull, giving them a momentary sensor lock, a ghost of a signal." On the Shadow Maw, that ghost was more than enough. "Partial energy reflection," Lear shouted, his voice cracking. "I got a momentary lock on their cargo bay. It's a Class 9 cryostasis unit. Profile matches. High-value biospecimens. Heavily shielded." Harrow leaned forward, a slow, predatory smile spreading across his face. High-value biospecimens would be worth a fortune. Rare flora, genetic samples, a cloned embryo. This derelict freighter held a king's ransom. "All hands to battle stations," Harrow commanded, his voice ringing with renewed purpose. "Disable them. I want that cargo." Back on the Vagrant, Ishka had already pulled up a star chart. Their current course was a long, empty stretch of space, a graveyard. "They'll stop playing and attack directly. Our speed is insufficient to escape, our weapons inadequate to fight." "So we hide," Imris said, pointing to a swirling, multicolored stain on the chart. "The Shroud Nebula," Zia breathed. "Captain, no. That's a ship shredder. It's full of asteroid fields, gravitational tides, and sensor-jamming particle clouds. Flying in there with conventional sensors is suicide." "We have unconventional sensors," Imris said, meeting her terrified gaze. "You will fly with your senses open, Zia. You'll have me. I can feel the mass of rocks and the gravitic shears. I will navigate for you." Zia looked at Ishka with wide eyes, silently begging for a different order. The captain's face, a landscape of armored plates, remained impassive. She weighed the certainty of destruction in open space against the possibility of survival in the nebula's chaotic embrace. She regarded Imris, who met her gaze with an unnerving calm. Then she turned to Zia, her brilliant, hotshot pilot. "I trust him, Miss Hassan," Ishka said. "Take us in." Zia took a deep, shuddering breath, her knuckles stark against the dark console. "Aye, Captain." She turned the ship toward the beautiful, lethal clouds. "Everybody, hang on." Plunging into the Shroud Nebula was like diving into liquid light. Vibrant clouds of ionized gas, crimson, sapphire, and emerald, whipped past the viewport. The bridge filled with the shriek of a dozen proximity alarms and the hiss of sensor static. Every screen except Imris's went haywire, displaying streams of corrupted data. "Sensors are blind! I'm flying on momentum alone!" Zia yelled over the cacophony. "Then stop looking." Imris's voice was steady in the noise. He closed his eyes. His hands rested lightly on his console, feeling the haptic feedback thrumming through his fingertips. A low-frequency hum filled his ears, a custom audio output he designed himself. He was listening to the nebula's weight. "Steady as she goes. We've got a clear path for another 20 seconds. On the Shadow Maw, which had followed them into the chaos, Harrow stared at his own static-filled screens in fury.
"Fire blindly! Blanket the area!"
Bolts of plasma erupted into the gas clouds, illuminating them from within like cosmic lightning. The Vagrant shuddered as a bolt detonated nearby. "They're guessing!" Zia shouted. "Let them," Imris said. "Hard port in 3, 2, 1, now!" Zia threw the ship into a turn that pulled at their insides. The view screen showed a massive, dark shape flashing past, an asteroid the size of a small moon they would have impacted head-on. "We're navigating a needle's eye," Imris murmured, his voice a steady rhythm against the chaos. "A cluster of iron-rich asteroids dead ahead. I'll take you through the middle. Give me a 20-degree dorsal pitch. Now. Hold it. Hold it. Level out." Zia became an extension of Imris's senses, executing his commands with inputs so quick they blurred, all while the ship shuddered violently around her. The gravimetric whispers of unseen dangers became a series of perfectly timed thruster burns. "The Akiri ship is moving to cut us off," Immers said. "They're trying to anticipate our exit point. Smart." A slow smile spread across his face. "But predictable. Zia, see that big bastard on the right? The one that looks like a potato?" A huge, lumpy asteroid dominated the viewport. "Hard to miss." "We'll use it. On my mark, I want you to kill the inertial dampeners for 1 second and hit the primary thrusters. We'll use its gravity to slingshot us around."
"That's insane!"
"That's the point. Mark!" Zia slammed the controls. For a dizzying moment, apparent gravity reversed, then slammed back into place as the ship whipped around the asteroid, the hull protesting with a shriek of stressed metal. They emerged from behind the rock and ice into a relatively clear pocket of space. Directly in front of them sat the Shadow Maw's stern. Ishka acted.
"Mr. Kane, give them something to remember us by."
"My pleasure, Captain," Immers said, opening his eyes. He flicked a series of switches. "Zia, get us close." Zia's grin was all teeth, a feral, joyful sight. She pushed the vagrant forward, bringing them right up on the Akiri's tail. "Firing cargo magnetizer, port side," Immers announced. He fired a pulse of focused magnetic energy, designed to lock onto heavy cargo containers that shot out and slammed into the Maw's stern. The pulse was only magnetic force, but its effect on an unprepared ship's power systems was catastrophic. The magnetic pulse hit the Shadow Maw with the force of a solid object. Emergency lights flared red, alarms blared, and the main power grid flickered violently. The impact threw Harrow against his command throne. He stared at the main view screen, which now showed the grimy, unassuming freighter pulling away, vanishing back into the nebula's vibrant clouds. The freighter had outmaneuvered them, outflown them, and then tagged, like some system runner buzzing a station traffic controller, by a common freighter inside a sensor-dead nebula. The humiliating strangeness of it defied all logic. His crew was in disarray, struggling to restore power and silence the screaming alarms. Only Lear was still, standing at his console, his narrow face pale, the angular planes of his species' face softened by shock. He turned to his captain, his jaw slack, his posture rigid with a terrible realization.
"They are tracking us,"
Lear stated, his voice quiet but carrying across the chaotic bridge.
"They are tracking something other than our energy or our emissions."
He raised his hand that shook slightly and pointed toward the spot where the freighter had disappeared.
"Our mass. They are tracking our disturbance in space-time itself."
Harrow rounded on him, his arrogance fractured, his voice a venomous rasp.
"Track our mass? That's theoretical nonsense. A scientific fantasy. How?"
Lear looked from his captain's furious face to the holotank, where the freighter's last known position still blinked, a taunting little icon in a sea of static.
"The explanation eludes me,"
Lear whispered, the words tumbling out, giving voice to the unthinkable theory building in his mind.
"It's like they can feel us."
Harrow stared, his mind reeling. For the first time in his career, he was the subject of an experiment, a toy. His shock hardened into something cold and dangerous. His posture straightened, and he clenched his hands into fists.
"If they can feel us," he snarled, "then stealth is a liability."
His snarl faded, replaced by a calm more terrifying than his rage.
"Helm, as soon as we clear this nebula, lay in an intercept course. Full power. Communications, prepare to broadcast a surrender demand on all channels."
He smiled, a chilling expression that showed too many teeth.
"The game is over. we will pry their hole open and take what is ours.
The Vagrant emerged from the Shroud Nebula, its hull plating scorched and its crew's nerves still singeing with adrenaline. The cheers on the bridge died down as the energy faded, replaced by the heavy silence of their predicament. "They're coming," Immers said, his voice flat. He pointed to his console, where the Akuri ship's amber ripple had reappeared, disengaging from the nebula and accelerating at a rate that made Zia curse under her breath. "They're done playing. It's personal now."
"They're gaining on us fast," Zia reported grimly. "We lack the speed to outrun them in open space. They'll have us in weapons range inside of an hour." "And our cargo magnetizer trick will only work once," Ishka added, her face set in grim lines. "They will anticipate it." Their situation had become even more precarious. The Akuri were hunting them out of wounded pride. "This chase is unsustainable," Ishka said, pacing the small bridge. "The client is expecting delivery of the Kanali Sun Orchid seeds in 3 shifts, roughly 36 hours. The negotiator's stability depends on it. We must deliver the cargo. We lack the power to fight. We lack the speed to run. We need them gone. Now." The hum of the life support system was the only sound on the bridge. They needed a way to make the most feared pirates in the sector give up and go home. Immers leaned back in his chair, taking a long, slow sip of the lukewarm coffee that had somehow survived the nebula chase. He stared into the middle distance, his brow furrowed in thought.
"What if we just gave them what they want?" he mused aloud.
Zia scoffed. "Are you insane? We give them the last sun orchid seeds and doom a peace treaty just to save our own skins?"
Immers looked from Zia's indignant face toward a schematic on a secondary monitor. It showed the ship's internal layout. He shifted his gaze to the schematics for the waste reclamation unit. A slow, mischievous grin spread across his face. "Or," he clarified, "what they think they want." He looked at Ishka, then at Zia. They were both staring at him. He pointed to the cargo bay schematic. "We have a spare cryo container in storage, right? An identical Class 9 unit?" The plan was insane, undignified, and childish. It was perfect. Zia stared, her eyes wide. A slow chuckle escaped her lips, then grew into a full-blown cackle of delighted disbelief. "Oh no, you have to be joking." "Oh, I'm serious," Immers said, his grin widening. "They want high-value biological samples. We'll give them the freshest biological samples on the ship." Ishka stared at him, her plated face revealing nothing. She considered the absurdity of the plan. It was an insult, a prank. It relied on their enemy's greed and arrogance, qualities the Akuri had in abundance. It was a strategy so far outside any recognized tactical doctrine that it might actually work. She considered him for a long moment, then gave a single sharp nod. The corner of her mouth quirked up, her equivalent of a broad, beaming smile. "Miss Hassan," she said, a low rumble in her voice suggesting amusement. "Report to the cargo bay with Mr. Kane. It seems you have a package to prepare." The Vagrant's cargo bay was a space of purely functional design. Immers and Zia stood before a pristine, white Class 9 cryostasis container, identical to the one holding the precious sun orchid seeds. "All right," Zia said, pulling on a pair of heavy-duty work gloves. "First, we need to make it look the part." She produced a set of magnetic stencils and a spray applicator. For the next 20 minutes, they aligned the stencils and applied layers of paint, stenciling the words Specimen Prime and a series of complex handling instructions onto the decoy's side. They finished with a prominent, terrifying-looking biohazard symbol. "Perfect," Immers said, admiring their handiwork. "Now for the hard part. We need its signature to match. Get into its system, Zia. Make sure its thermal output and EM field are an exact match for the real one. It needs to broadcast, "I am full of important cold things," to any passive sensor scan. Zia grinned and produced a thin, flexible data pad, plugging it into the container's control port. "Leave it to me. I'll have this thing humming like a legitimate cryopod in 10 minutes. While she worked, Immers turned his attention to the contents. He unsealed a maintenance hatch on the wall, revealing a series of thick, insulated pipes connected to the ship's waste reclamation system. The ship's processors broke down all biological waste, sterilized it with radiation, and compressed it into a dense, inert, nutrient-rich sludge used for the ship's small hydroponics bay. Technically clean, it was also brown, thick, and profoundly unpleasant. "Okay," Immers called out, attaching a wide-bore transfer hose. "You might want to hold your breath."
"Way ahead of you,"
Zia replied, pinching her nose, her voice nasal. He activated the pump. A thick, viscous, foul-smelling sludge flowed through the translucent hose and into the pristine cryo container. The process was slow and messy, filled with a running commentary of dark gallows humor.
"Think they'll be able to tell the difference between this and rare orchid pollen?"
Immers grunted, wrestling with the hose.
"Only if they have a truly exceptional sense of smell,"
Zia gagged.
"Or, eyes."
An hour later, they finished the job. The decoy container was filled, sealed, and chilled to cryogenic temperatures. They moved the real container, the one with the actual sun orchid seeds, into a shielded maintenance locker behind a stack of spare engine parts, its signature masked by the locker's lead lining. The decoy sat in the most prominent, easily accessible spot in the cargo bay. The decoy stood ready. Back on the bridge, they ran through the plan one last time.
"We drop out of FTL near the desolate moon in the Leth system," Ishka said, tapping the star chart. "Zia, you will simulate a catastrophic drive failure. I want sparks. I want alarms. Sell it."
"I can make this console play an opera if you want, Captain," Zia grinned.
"Then I will broadcast a repeating automated distress call," Ishka continued. "Critical engine failure, failing life support, and to complete the picture, we will vent atmosphere from the cargo bay. Make it look like we've had a hull breach."
Immers watched the amber ripple on his screen. The Akuri ship was still gaining.
"They're greedy, arrogant, and angry. An apparently crippled ship with a prize they're already salivating over? They will take the bait."
"Let's ensure that," Ishka said. "Let's go set our trap."
The Vagrant dropped out of FTL with a sickening lurch. On the bridge, Zia slammed her fist onto a pre-rigged console, and a shower of cosmetic but impressive-looking sparks erupted. Alarms blared across the ship.
"Drive core breach simulated," she reported cheerfully. "We are adrift."
The desolate, pockmarked face of Leth 7 filled the main view screen. The moon was the perfect place for an ambush, quiet, remote, and unobserved. Ishka began broadcasting, her voice calm and measured over all public channels.
"Mayday, mayday, mayday. This is freighter The Vagrant. We have suffered a critical drive failure. Engine room shut down. Life support is failing. Requesting immediate assistance. Mayday, mayday."
The message looped, a desperate, automated plea for help. Immers watched his grav sensors. The Akuri ship had dropped out of FTL moments after them, holding at a distance. Now, as the distress call echoed through the system, the amber ripple on his screen moved. It was a direct, aggressive acceleration. They were dropping all pretense, moving in for the capture.
"They're coming,"
he announced.
"Closing fast."
"The final touch," Ishka commanded. "Zia, vent the cargo bay."
"Venting now," Zia confirmed. A great cloud of frozen oxygen and nitrogen bloomed from the Vagrant's cargo bay airlock, glittering in the distant star's light. On the Akuri's screens, the cloud looked exactly like a catastrophic hull breach, the final exhalation of a dying ship. The bridge crew held their positions in silence. The trap was set. Now they just had to wait for the monster to step in it. The minutes dragged, each chronometer tick a sharp report in the silence. From her command chair, Ishka watched the internal sensor feed from the cargo bay. The ship was silent, running on minimal power, playing dead. The only sounds were the soft hum of emergency lighting and the steady breathing of her crew. A faint, high-pitched whine vibrated through the hull, the sound of a plasma torch cutting through the outer airlock door. They were here.
"Boarding party inbound,"
Immers whispered, his eyes on a motion sensor display. A section of the cargo bay door glowed cherry red, then fell inward with a dull clang. 4 figures in form-fitting black environmental armor dropped into the bay. They moved in silence, weapons held ready. They moved past the scattered crates and the flashing emergency lights. They had one target. Zia held her breath. Immers remained perfectly still. Ishka watched, a strange detachment settling over her, as if watching a scene from a playback. She cataloged their movements, their gear, their formation. The raiders swarmed the decoy container. One attached a diagnostic tool, confirming the cryo unit was active. Another attached heavy magnetic clamps. They worked in disciplined silence, a perfectly coordinated team. They were in and out in under 90 seconds. The raiders attached the container to a tether and winched it back out through the hole they had cut. Ishka watched on the external cameras as a small, angular boarding pod detached from their hull and sped back toward the Shadow Maw.
"They're clear,"
Immers reported.
"Pod is away. The Maw is powering up its main drive."
A moment later, his screen flared.
"They're jumping. FTL signature detected."
A beat passed.
And they're gone.
The crew remained tense for one more second, waiting for a final, violent reprisal. The void outside was clear. The ghost had vanished. Harrow surveyed the cryo container, now magnetized to his bridge floor. He drew himself up to his full height, a triumphant smile on his face. His boarding team stood at attention, back on board less than 5 minutes after breaching the freighter's hull. He had faced an anomaly, a bizarre and irritating puzzle, and he had resolved it with overwhelming force, as it should be.
"A perfect mission,"
he announced, circling the white container like a shark.
"The fools on that freighter were incompetent, a crew barely able to pilot their own ship. They died as they lived, pathetically."
Lear shifted uncomfortably at his station.
"Captain,"
he said, his voice low.
"The freighter's crew. They remained passive. Their escape pods were intact."
He shook his head.
"It was too easy."
Harrow laughed, a sharp, grating sound.
"You see conspiracy in a sunrise, Lear. They were dead or dying from their accident. Their resistance was irrelevant."
He waved a dismissive hand at his second-in-command, turning his full attention to their prize. He ran a claw along the stenciled words, Specimen Prime.
"Imagine a wealth within,"
he purred.
"Rare Canali sun orchids, genetic material from an extinct species, perhaps even a new life form."
He looked at his bridge crew, their dark faces reflecting his own avarice.
"Open it. Let us behold our reward."
2 of his crew moved forward with a hydraulic pry bar. Harrow dismissed Lear's persistent unease as the cowardice he had always known it to be. He had won. His superiority was, as always, absolute. The tech jammed the tool into the container's primary seal and engaged the hydraulics. There was a loud crack, followed by a great hiss as they breached the cryo seal and the internal atmosphere vented. A wave of frigid vapor billowed out. Harrow leaned forward, anticipation making his breath catch. The vapor cleared, and then it happened. The container's thawed, depressurized contents erupted outwards in a thick, brown, foul-smelling wave. The sterilized but still deeply unpleasant sludge, propelled by the last of the escaping gas, splattered across the pristine, minimalist Akiri bridge. It coated the polished consoles. It dripped from the ceiling panels. It drenched a shocked and horrified Harrow from head to toe. The smell was overwhelming. It was the concentrated, processed scent of 1,000 forgotten meals and 100 biological outputs. For a long, stunned moment, only silence filled the Shadow Maw's bridge. A silence broken only by the soft, wet plop of sludge dripping from the tip of Harrow's elegant, aquiline nose. A wave of triumphant, hysterical laughter washed over the vagrant's bridge. Zia doubled over in her chair, tears streaming down her face. I wish I could have seen his face. Oh, God, I wish we had a camera on that thing. Imrys leaned back, taking a long, slow, deeply satisfying sip of a freshly brewed cup of coffee. He looked utterly content.
I'm just glad we're upwind.
Ishka watched the empty patch of space where the most feared pirate ship in the sector had vanished. Her face, as usual, was a mask of plates, but her shoulders seemed less tense, the rigid posture she always maintained softening just a fraction. She turned to her crew, her dark eyes sweeping over Zia's helpless giggling and Imrys's quiet, smug satisfaction. The corner of her mouth quirked upwards. "Good work, team," she said. She turned her gaze to the star chart, to their final destination. "Now, let's go deliver some flowers." The vagrant, battered but victorious, turned its nose toward the distant star system, leaving the Leth system's ghosts behind. Weeks later, the vagrant docked at orbital station Epsilon Prime, the Kanali sun orchid seeds safely delivered. A message pinged on Ishka's official pad. She read it, then forwarded it to the crew's personal devices. From Guild Negotiator's Office, RE, Contract G-77B. Captain Ishka, delivery confirmed. Specimen is viable. We noted your flight plan required. Significant evasive maneuvers in a sector with known Akuri pirate activity. We appreciate your discretion in handling the matter. A substantial hazard bonus has been transferred to your account. Thank you for your service. Imrys read the message and smiled.
Discretion. I like that.
Zia, who was scrolling through a public news feed on a nearby monitor, let out a snort of laughter. Hey guys, you might want to see this. She pointed to the screen. The headline read, Infamous pirate lord Harrow the Immaculate in abrupt retirement following a deeply embarrassing failed heist. Sources cite sanitation dispute. Later that evening, the three of them sat in the ship's small galley, sharing a meal. They laughed, traded stories, and already argued about the best route for their next, hopefully much more boring, cargo run. They were more than a captain, a pilot, and a sensor tech. They were a crew, a strange, chaotic, and fiercely competent little family, drifting through the stars in their beat-up, unassuming ship. And they liked it that way.